I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and we are going to leave no dye mixed with citric acid behind to do some really heavy countertop speckles using leftover colors. We have a lot of what I think is electric violet, a fair amount of pecan brown, what I'm pretty sure is lichen, lilac, and maybe midnight blue. I'm not entirely sure, but I think editing Rebecca will be able to double check Dye Pot Weekly 500 and let you know right now. But my plan is to take this leftover color and to dye some yarn on the countertop, which then we will steam set in the end. And my goal is to use up all of this dye. We'll see if I can do it, but that is our goal here today. And now, why do I want to use it up? Well, some of this dye I've used in multiple different videos now, and I want to free up the containers so I can play and pull from other colors versus having a lot of pecan brown and electric violet speckles in many, many different videos. And so that is the plan. And well, now let's take a closer look at our yarn. Right here I have 200 grams of Knit Pick Stroll fingering weight yarn that I pre-soaked for a couple of hours in plain tap water. Since all of our dyes have citric acid in them already, we don't really need to add acid to the yarn. We could, but I think today I won't. And I don't know what conclusions, if any, I'd be able to make from that, but I think we're just gonna go for it with this yarn. And so let's set up the yarn on the countertop. But if you want to learn more about any of the tools and equipment I'm using in my videos, I do have links and affiliate links down in the video description, and I may earn a commission if you make a purchase through one of my affiliate links. I have spread out this yarn on my countertop so that way as I'm speckling, I'm not just getting sort of the outside of the skein. By sort of spreading it like this, it means that in theory I could do fewer flips to get good coverage on the yarn. And off to the side, I do have a Yarn Mop that I've been using for multiple videos. It's Swish DK, and it may or may not show up more in this video because I'm using it in many videos. And now I'm going to put on my deluxe rubber respirating mask, safety glasses, and gloves, and we're going to start speckling onto this yarn. Now, one of the goals I said I had for this Leave No Dye Behind today is to use up as much color as I possibly can. But as I say that, I also want to make sure that we end up with yarn that is really, really pretty. And so I don't want to overdo it too much. And I was just starting with the lichen, which actually I think is contaminated with some of the blue from my other project. I don't always wipe my hands on a yarn mop when I'm switching colors. I did consider adding all this dye to little shakers because that's a really nice way to add heavy speckles onto yarn. But the thing that kept me from doing that in the end was the fact that I didn't want to make more containers dirty. I believe that was midnight blue. A nice punch of color. And I'm pretty sure that this is lilac. I have the least amount of these colors. This is going to be probably very, very purple overall. But as I'm doing this, and the dyes that were mixed with citric acid had, goodness, at least these three colors I've used so far, it had 2 scoops, so about a total of maybe 1/16 of a teaspoon of acid dye mixed with 1/2 teaspoon of citric acid. Oh goodness, I don't think we're going to use all this up. This is, I think, our pecan brown. And oh goodness, there is so much of this. I'm trying to take this a little bit all over now. And so I'm taking these little pinches and running it around. And so if you want to get super heavy speckles, it is better to go over the same area multiple times than it is to just sort of drop more of the dye on at once, because then you're more likely to end up with a clump versus heavy speckles. But yeah, I mean, I'm going heavy with this brown, and I'm thinking Oh dear. It's just, I'm not making a dent. I'm not making a dent. We'll see what happens as we move it, as we move the yarn, but you know, sometimes I want to use things up and it works and sometimes it doesn't. But look at all this electric violet. Oh man, I used all of this dye for, I think it was Hanukkah. And so I mixed up a lot of it because I was dyeing many skeins. Whoops, I dropped one larger clump on our yarn, but that is okay. We have some nice contrast with that lichen. Yep, there goes another clump. I will probably pick those up in a moment. But hopefully, these are some speckles that you can see a little bit from outer space. Goodness. Not as much coverage. Well, I mean, we're getting as much coverage as I thought that I wanted to do. But not as much, not using up as much of the color as I had hoped. Oh dear. Okay. Getting those massive clumps off. Working them into my Yarn Mop. And I think I want to let this sit for a minute or two before I flip it to add more color to the other side. But you can see we have tons of speckles in here. Tons and tons and tons of speckles. Okay, let's flip this yarn. One thing I have never done, I've never at this intermediate stage gone and steam set the yarn and then brought it back over before dyeing the other side. And I wonder what that would do for you. Another thing that I have but haven't played with is I do have a tabletop steamer that in theory would be fun to use and sort of bring over at this intermediate segment. But anyway, I'm going to speed things up and we're going to add more color onto our yarn. The ever-present leave no dye behind conundrum, where I go into something intending to use up all the dye and then maybe that's not going to happen. And the ironic thing is I've done this with this purple and brown before. So I have a feeling that some of those colors will lead to another heavy speckled project because I like the hints of the lichen and the lilac showing through with the other colors. I love what this yarn is doing. So I'm going to keep adding dye and waiting a minute or two, moving the yarn, adding more dye until I'm happy with the coverage. I don't want to have any large patches of white left on the yarn. And I'm not going to worry about using up all the dye, even though that was my goal. I'm going to use up as much as I can, but leaving some behind, sometimes it's best to not meet a goal of using up leftovers if it means you get something that you love in the process. And so that's really important to consider. I think that about covers it. We've got some very heavy speckles here on this yarn. And now I want to heat set it. So what I'm going to do is carefully lift up the yarn, sort of roll it up like this, and go put it in a steamer basket and steam set it for 30 minutes. And our countertop is a mess. And so I'm going to bring over my Yarn Mop here to help wipe this up. And attempting to leave no dye behind. We still have a little bit of brown and a lot of purple left. So I will save those for another day. Another day, another dyeing project. But I was able to use up a lot of dye. And so that has me happy. And I have a feeling that I might be calling it on this particular Yarn Mop. But you never know. She is cute. I will steam set her once I'm done with it. It has been 30 minutes. And ooh, look at that heavy speckled yarn. I am going to go set this aside to cool so we can wash it. And it's funny, I'm seeing mostly the purple and brown right now. I'm not seeing the lilac. I'm seeing a hint of some of the lichen. I wonder how much those are covered up. But we'll see once it's dry. But I'm also going to take this opportunity to take our lovely Yarn Mop that I've used from this and other videos and pop it here into the steamer basket, and we'll steam set this for 30 minutes. We'll wash this one off camera. Let's wash our yarn, and we're gonna wash the Yarn Mop with it. I'm not anticipating any bleeding, but it's always nice to have yarn that was dyed on a countertop, nice and submerged in cool tap water, because then you know. Now, normally countertop speckles don't change the background color, but we were adding so much dye and moving the yarn a few times, so we might have sort of a more pastel color versus white on the background. But let's add some dish soap and fill this up. Woohoo! No colors coming out. Always wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and finish rinsing out the soap. Then I'm going to put the yarn through my spin dryer and hang it up to dry. Here is our heavy countertop speckled yarn. Most of the notes that are coming through are the purple and brown, but I definitely see hints of our blued steel and lichen. Here we go, you can definitely see them here. The lilac, I'm not sure. It's a bit of a pinkier purple, and I think the electric violet really does overshadow it a bit. The background color is still mostly white. It may have picked up a tiny bit of color, but this is not a neutral speckled yarn at all. It'll be mottled, it'll have texture. It would be hard to do complex stitch patterns with this yarn, and so I doubt you would feel a lot of that white because it will sort of blend with all these other colors when you're knitting it up, but I think that, I don't know, it's a lot of fun. I think I talked about the Yarn Mop earlier in this video. I originally filmed this video as part of a behind the scenes live stream, and so you could go actually still and watch that live stream to see the unedited clips and the unedited portion of the time lapse from this video, if you would like. But the Yarn Mop has a lot of different colors in it that aren't in our yarn because I use this for multiple videos. And if you want to see the collection of those videos, I should have a short talking about this on the channel. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I just recently published the 500th episode of my Dye Pot Weekly series. And in that video, I showed how to speckle yarn in 4 different ways. And in general, if I'm doing more light speckles, and that's the only color I'm adding on yarn, I prefer to speckle with the direct dye powder because you get more punch and more color. But if I'm gonna speckle with citric acid, and again, that's not an accent to another tonal or variegated colorway, I love to do heavy speckles. I love those results there. One of my favorite ways to use citric acid speckles are when I want to have speckles in the yarn that sort of add a little bit of oomph or pizzazz to the colorway that exists versus being the star of the show. However, whenever I'm doing that, I often end up with plenty of extra citric acid powder. And so then we get these awesome leave no dye behind videos. So if there's other types of speckling projects you would like to see me try, please let me know down in the comments below. Because either it's something I can add to my list of things to film, or I can direct you to a video where maybe I've tried out that technique in the past. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I really enjoy this Leave No Dye Behind series, which there's hundreds of videos in this kind of family as well as the Dye Pot Weekly series, because when you're dyeing yarn, sometimes you have leftover dye, whether it's citric acid speckles, liquid dyes, what have you. And occasionally I incorporate those dye leftovers into the video itself, but other times I have leftovers from multiple different videos that I've been filming or things that I've saved over the course of the week, and well, I need to use that up, and so it ends up being its own video. My goal with this type of video is to show that just as you can create stunning colorways that you go into with planning, when you have materials that you want to use to create a colorway and you're using what you have versus what you've specifically picked for a project, you get a level of artistic freedom that is a lot of fun. Of course, it's fun in any event to just let what's happening on the yarn speak to you and to continue following that path. But I find that I'm especially free when I'm using up dye leftovers and just trying to see what I'll get when I toss things together. But anyway, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you haven't done that already, and turn on notifications, because if I decide to go and do a live stream last minute, that way you are more likely to have your phone let you know that I'm live. So that way you can join in with all the fun. Thank you so much for watching.